The words on my medical chart made my blood run cold. Stage 3 breast cancer? Diagnosed 6 months ago. I stared at the document in my hands, my mind racing. 6 months ago? But Dr. Sarah Chen had told me my mammogram was perfectly normal. She looked me in the eye and said there was nothing to worry about. There must be some mistake, I whispered to the nurse who'd accidentally handed me the wrong file. Oh my God, she gasped, realizing what had happened. You weren't supposed to see that. Dr. Chen handles all communications about diagnoses. But I had seen it, and the date stamp showed that Dr. Chen had known about my cancer for half a year, while telling me I was healthy. If you've ever trusted a doctor with your life only to discover they were playing God with your death, stay with me, because what I uncovered about Dr. Chen's real motives for hiding my diagnosis will make you question every medical professional you've ever trusted. My name is Patricia. I'm 52 years old, and this is how I discovered that some doctors don't take the Hippocratic Oath. They take lives. 8 years. That's how long I'd been putting my complete faith in Dr. Sarah Chen, never imagining she would one day use that trust to slowly kill me. When I found that lump in January, Dr. Chen was my first call. Harvard-educated, board-certified oncologist, the woman who'd fought to save my mother's life 5 years earlier. If anyone could help me, it was her. Don't panic, Patricia, she said in that calm voice I'd grown to love. Most lumps are benign, but let's get you tested just to be safe. The mammogram, the ultrasound, the anxious waiting, and then her call with the wonderful news. Your tests are completely normal, just dense breast tissue, nothing to worry about. I cried with relief. Dr. Chen had saved me from my worst fears, just like she'd tried to save Mom. But as months passed, strange things started happening. The fatigue that made me fall asleep at my desk. Weight loss I celebrated, but probably shouldn't have. Night sweats I blamed on menopause. All perfectly normal for your age, Dr. Chen assured me during each visit. Perimenopause can be tricky. When I mentioned the lump seemed bigger, she had an answer for that too. Dense tissue fluctuates with hormones. Remember, we did comprehensive imaging. You're fine. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? She was my doctor, my mother's doctor, a pillar of the medical community. Even when the fatigue became debilitating, when the lump grew noticeably larger, when lymph nodes under my arm started swelling, Dr. Chen had explanations for everything. Anxiety can manifest physical symptoms, she said, prescribing hormone therapy and suggesting therapy. Sometimes worry about cancer creates symptoms that feel real but aren't. I left feeling embarrassed for being a hypochondriac, grateful for her patience with my anxiety. What I didn't know was that every symptom I reported was being carefully documented, not for my treatment, but for her research. I wasn't a patient to Dr. Chen. I was a test subject, and she was getting paid to watch me deteriorate. The medical records I would later discover painted a horrifying picture. Subject continues to present with classic symptoms of advancing breast cancer. Patient remains unaware per protocol. Excellent data collection. While I trusted her with my life, she was literally betting on my death. What I found in that accidentally given file not just explained her lies, It revealed a conspiracy that would make your blood boil. July 15th started like any other day. I was going in for routine blood work, expecting nothing more than hormone level results. Instead, a nervous new nurse's mistake would expose the most evil betrayal I could ever imagine. Jessica was clearly flustered, fumbling with files at the front desk. Second week on the job, still learning the system. "Patricia Morrison?" she called, handing me a manila folder. "Dr. Chen wants you to review these before next week's appointment." I opened it, expecting boring lab results. What I found instead made me question reality itself. Patient Patricia Morrison, initial diagnosis, stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, January 18th, 2025. Current status, stage 3, tumor growth 40% over 6 months. Treatment protocol, delayed intervention study, monitoring natural progression. The words swam before my eyes. Delayed intervention study? Monitoring natural progression. Dr. Chen hadn't just known about my cancer, she'd been deliberately letting it grow worse while taking notes like I was a lab rat. "Excuse me?" I called to Jessica, my voice barely working. "I think there's been a mistake." The color drained from her face when she saw what I was holding. "Oh no, oh no, oh no. You weren't supposed to get that. That's Dr. Chen's research file." Research file? About my cancer? That I supposedly didn't have? I kept reading, each page more horrifying than the last. Detailed notes about my tumor's growth, photographs documenting the progression, correspondence with something called the Natural History Cancer Research Institute. Subject continues to present with classic symptoms of advancing breast cancer. Patient remains unaware per protocol. Tumor growth rate exceeding projections. Excellent data for study. They were excited that my cancer was growing faster than expected. Another note from 2 weeks ago. Patient expressing increased concern about symptoms. Recommended anxiety medication to maintain compliance with delayed treatment protocol. She'd prescribed anxiety medication not to help me, but to keep me quiet while my cancer spread. But the emails were the worst part. Dr. Chen corresponding with researchers, discussing my case like I was livestock. Patricia Morrison continues to be an ideal subject for the natural progression study. Patient is compliant, trusting, and shows no signs of seeking second opinions. Recommend continuing delayed intervention for additional 3 to 6 months. The response made me physically sick. "Excellent work, Dr. Chen. The Morrison case will provide invaluable data. The $50,000 bonus for cases that reach stage 4 while maintaining patient compliance is still available." $50,000. That's what my life was worth to them. And they'd pay her extra if she could keep me ignorant long enough for the cancer to become nearly untreatable. When Dr. Chen appeared in the waiting room minutes later, her professional mask couldn't hide the panic in her eyes. "Patricia, there's been a mix-up with some paperwork. Let's discuss this privately." "Discuss what? How you've been watching cancer kill me for 6 months while taking notes?" "Please, you're upset and confused. Let me explain." "Explain what? How you're being paid to let me die?" The waiting room had gone silent. Other patients stared in horror as the truth spilled out. Dr. Chen's composure cracked slightly, and for just a moment, I saw something cold and calculating behind her caring facade. Mrs. Morrison, you're having an emotional reaction to paperwork you don't understand. Perhaps we should discuss this with a sedative to help you calm down. No, I said, clutching the file. I'm taking this to another doctor today. That would be a serious mistake. You don't understand the complexities of... I understand that you've been slowly murdering me for money. I walked out of that office knowing that the woman I'd trusted most in the world had been systematically destroying my life for profit. The documents I discovered that night contained 3 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about medical ethics. Authorized human experimentation. Racing across town to the university hospital, I felt like I was fleeing a crime scene, except I was both the victim and the evidence. I need to see an oncologist immediately, I told the emergency department receptionist, my hands still shaking. I just discovered I have cancer that's been hidden from me for 6 months. The triage nurse took one look at Dr. Chen's research file and immediately called for Dr. Michael Rodriguez, head of oncology. Dr. Rodriguez was everything Dr. Chen had pretended to be, genuinely shocked, thoroughly professional, and visibly disturbed by what he was reading. Mrs. Morrison, what I'm seeing here isn't medicine. This appears to be unauthorized human experimentation. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer. Human experimentation. That's what I've been. Not a patient, but a test subject. So the cancer is real? Very real. And based on these notes, it's been progressing untreated for 6 months. We need imaging immediately. The next hours blurred together. CT scans, MRIs, blood work. When Dr. Rodriguez finally sat down with my results, his expression was grim. Stage 3 invasive ductal carcinoma, significant growth since the original diagnosis, spread to multiple lymph nodes. How bad is it really? Serious, but treatable. If we'd started treatment 6 months ago when Dr. Chen first found it, this would have been much simpler. Your prognosis would have been much better. What if I'd waited longer? Dr. Rodriguez hesitated. Based on the progression rate in these files, you probably had a few more months before stage 4. At that point, he didn't need to finish. I understood. She was waiting for stage 4, wasn't she? The file mentioned a bonus. It appears so, yes. The rage hit me then. Not just fear about cancer, but fury about the betrayal. This woman had been watching me get sicker, documenting my decline, waiting for me to reach the point where treatment might not work. How could a doctor do this? I don't know, but what she did violates every principle of medical ethics. This isn't medicine. It's criminal human experimentation. We started treatment immediately. Aggressive chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, the full arsenal that could have been much gentler if we'd started 6 months earlier. That evening, I called my daughter Emma. Mom, what do you mean the doctor hid your cancer? That's not possible. I have the document, sweetheart. She's been watching it grow for 6 months as part of some research study. That's attempted murder. I don't know what it is legally, but I know that she stole 6 months of my life. Emma was on a plane the next morning. While preparing for treatment, I started researching that Natural History Cancer Research Institute. What I found was a rabbit hole of medical corruption that went much deeper than just Dr. Chen. The institute wasn't legitimate. It was a private company that paid doctors to delay treatment to study natural disease progression. Online forums revealed dozens of similar cases, patients whose doctors had delayed treatment while secretly documenting their deterioration.
My lung cancer was called pneumonia for 8 months. Found out later my doctor was being paid to see how long I could survive without treatment. My husband's prostate cancer was misdiagnosed as benign enlargement for a year while it spread to his bones. The doctor was part of some study we never consented to. There were dozens of stories, all following the same pattern. Doctors enrolled in this research program. Patients kept ignorant while their conditions worsened, families destroyed by preventable deaths. How many others is she doing this to? I asked Dr. Rodriguez. I've reported this to every authority I can think of. The medical board, the attorney general, the FBI. What she did isn't just malpractice, it's criminal human experimentation. As I prepared for my first chemo session, I realized Dr. Chen hadn't just betrayed my trust. She'd stolen months of my life and potentially years from my future. But I was about to discover that her research program was just the tip of an iceberg that would shock the entire medical community. What happened when I told David the truth would test everything we thought we knew about family, love, and the bonds that survive even the most devastating revelations. 2 weeks into chemotherapy, my phone rang with a call that would change everything I thought I knew about medical corruption. Mrs. Morrison, this is FBI agent Sarah Williams. I'm investigating Dr. Chen and the Natural History Cancer Research Institute. Your case has provided crucial evidence of what appears to be a massive conspiracy. How massive? We've identified 47 other patients in Dr. Chen's practice alone who appear to have been enrolled in delayed treatment studies without their knowledge. 47. The number hit me like a physical blow. 47 other people who trusted Dr. Chen only to become unwitting test subjects. All cancer patients? Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, any condition where delayed treatment could provide natural disease progression data that research companies are willing to pay for. Agent Williams explained that the Natural History Institute was part of a network recruiting doctors to conduct unethical studies. Dr. Chen received $25,000 per patient enrolled, with bonuses for patients whose conditions progressed to advanced stages. So the sicker we got, the more money she made? Exactly. The data was sold to pharmaceutical companies wanting to understand disease progression without early treatment interference. Over the following weeks, other victims came forward with stories that made my blood boil. Margaret, 58, had been told her chest pains were anxiety for 10 months, while actually having severe heart disease. Dr. Chen kept prescribing anxiety medication while my heart was literally dying, Margaret told me at the FBI office. James, 61, was told his diabetes was well controlled while Dr. Chen secretly documented his complications. She watched my kidneys fail and my vision deteriorate while telling me everything was fine. I could have gone blind because she wanted data. The most heartbreaking case was Linda, 49, whose ovarian cancer was called hormonal changes for over a year. By the time I got a second opinion, it had spread throughout my abdomen. Linda died 3 months later. Her cancer had progressed too far for treatment. She might have survived if Dr. Chen had treated her when first detected. Instead, she became a data point. The investigation revealed Dr. Chen had been recruited while struggling with insurance costs and student loans. They offered supplemental income for contributing to important medical research. They convinced her that short delays wouldn't significantly harm patients, but would provide valuable data. But she had to know people would die. The Institute provided fake studies to show questioning patients. When you asked about second opinions, she had prepared responses to make you feel unreasonable or anxious. Financial records were staggering. Dr. Chen had received over $1.2 million over 3 years for enrolling patients in unauthorized studies. She bought a house, luxury car, and paid off loans with money earned by letting patients get sicker. Most damning were Dr. Chen's own notes documenting patients' decline with clinical detachment. Patient Morrison shows classic signs of advancing breast cancer, fatigue increasing, tumor growth visible, excellent progression data. Patient remains compliant and trusting. She'd written about my suffering like I was a laboratory animal. The investigation revealed the Institute had similar arrangements with doctors in 12 states, creating a network conducting unauthorized human experiments. This is one of the largest medical fraud cases we've investigated, Agent Williams told me. Your courage to speak up has potentially saved hundreds of lives. But for me, the most important outcome was other patients finally getting proper treatment. 47 people are receiving care because you exposed what was happening, Dr. Rodriguez told me. Keep watching because what we discovered about inherited trauma would not only heal our family, it would save hundreds of others. Standing there in that federal courtroom 6 months later, watching Dr. Chen in handcuffs, I finally understood what justice looked like, and it was more satisfying than any revenge I could have imagined. The trial had been front-page news for weeks. Local doctor conducted illegal human experiments. Patients used as lab rats for profit. Medical betrayal rocks the community. Dr. Chen sat at the defendant's table looking nothing like the confident physician I'd once trusted. Gone was the warm bedside manner, replaced by the cold calculation of someone who'd been caught. The prosecution will show, announced District Attorney Michael Torres, that Dr. Sarah Chen systematically betrayed her patients' trust,
conducting unauthorized medical experiments for personal profit while watching them suffer and die. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing $1.2 million in payments, email correspondence discussing patients like livestock, medical files documenting deliberate delays in treatment. But it was the victim testimony that really drove home the scope of her crimes. Margaret took the stand first, describing how Dr. Chen had watched her have heart attacks while calling them anxiety. She prescribed anti-anxiety medication while my heart was literally dying, Margaret testified. I trusted her completely while she was documenting my decline for money. James testified about losing his vision, while Dr. Chen called his diabetes well controlled. She watched me go blind while taking notes for her research study. I'll never see my grandchildren's faces because she wanted data. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Dr. Chen as I spoke. She didn't just betray my trust, she stole 6 months of my life while cancer spread through my body while lying to my face every single day. Dr. Chen's defense attorney tried to paint her as a dedicated researcher who'd been misled by the Natural History Institute. Dr. Chen believed she was contributing to important medical research that would ultimately help patients, he argued. She was told that short delays in treatment would have minimal impact. But Prosecutor Torres destroyed that argument with Dr. Chen's own emails. The Morrison case will provide invaluable data, he read from her correspondence. Patient remains compliant and trusting. Does that sound like someone who cared about their patient's well-being? The most damning evidence was a recording the FBI had obtained of Dr. Chen at a Natural History Institute training session. The key is maintaining patient compliance. Her voice said clearly, you have to make them trust you completely while you document their decline. The sicker they get, the more valuable the data becomes. When the recording played in court, several jurors looked physically sick. Dr. Chen's own testimony was a disaster. She tried to maintain that she'd believed she was helping advance medical science. I thought the research would ultimately benefit future patients, she said. Even when you knew patients were dying? Torres asked. I believe the delays were minimal and wouldn't significantly impact outcomes.
You received a $50,000 bonus when patients reach stage 4 cancer. How does that help future patients?" Dr. Chen had no answer. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. "Guilty on all counts," the foreman announced. "Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit human experimentation, reckless endangerment, and involuntary manslaughter in the death of Linda Patterson." Dr. Chen showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but I saw her hands shaking. At sentencing, Judge Patricia Williams didn't hold back. "Dr. Chen, you violated the most sacred trust in our society, the trust between doctor and patient. You turned your medical practice into a laboratory where your patients were unwitting test subjects. You watched people suffer and die while documenting their decline for profit. You stole not just money, but months and years of people's lives. This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole." As they led Dr. Chen away in shackles, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. But the trial's impact went far beyond Dr. Chen's conviction. The Natural History Cancer Research Institute was shut down. 12 other doctors in the network were arrested. New federal laws were passed requiring explicit consent for any medical research. The Chen case has fundamentally changed how we regulate medical research, Agent Williams told me after the sentencing. Your courage to speak up has protected countless future patients. Medical schools now teach the Chen protocol as an example of research ethics violations. My case is studied in bioethics classes across the country. But perhaps most importantly, all 47 of Dr. Chen's victims received proper treatment. Most of us survived because we caught our conditions before they became untreatable. Sometimes the most broken families become the strongest ones when they're rebuilt on truth instead of lies. 2 years after Dr. Chen's conviction, I was standing in front of a congressional committee, my hair finally grown back from chemo, testifying about the need for stronger protections against medical experimentation. "Honorable members," I began, "my name is Patricia Morrison, and I'm here to tell you about the hidden epidemic of doctors who view their patients not as people to heal, but as subjects to study." The hearing room was packed with other victims, medical professionals, and journalists. Our story had sparked a national conversation about medical ethics and patient rights. "Dr. Chen didn't just betray my trust," I continued. "She stole 6 months of my life while cancer spread through my body. But more importantly, she showed us how easily the doctor-patient relationship can be corrupted when profit becomes more important than healing." Congressman David Martinez leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, what specific changes do you believe we need to prevent this from happening again?" "3 things," I replied. "Mandatory disclosure of all research funding to patients, criminal penalties for conducting unauthorized medical experiments, and a national database to track doctors who've been involved in research ethics violations." The testimony was part of a larger movement that had grown from our case. The Patricia Morrison Patient Protection Act was working its way through Congress, promising the strongest patient rights protections in American history. But my real work was happening outside of Washington. I'd started the Informed Patient Foundation with other victims from Dr. Chen's practice. Our mission was simple: educate patients about their rights and help them recognize when they might be being used for unauthorized research. "Trust your instincts," I told audiences at medical conferences and patient advocacy events. "If your doctor is discouraging second opinions, minimizing your symptoms, or seems more interested in documenting your condition than treating it, ask questions." Margaret had become our spokesperson for heart disease awareness. Her story about Dr. Chen misdiagnosing heart attacks as anxiety had led to new protocols for evaluating chest pain in women. Doctors can no longer dismiss women's cardiac symptoms as emotional, she tells cardiology conferences. Dr. Chen taught us that patients' concerns must be taken seriously. James focused on diabetes education. No diabetic should lose their vision because a doctor wants research data. Your health is not a science experiment, and you have the right to demand proper care. The foundation had also helped identify 3 other doctors involved in similar schemes. Our red flags checklist had been distributed to hospitals nationwide. Doctors who discourage second opinions, unusual delays in treatment for serious conditions, physicians who seem more interested in documenting symptoms than treating them, medical practices that receive funding from unknown research institutes. We'd also worked with medical schools to develop new ethics curricula. The Chen case was now required study in bioethics classes across the country. Your experience has fundamentally changed how we teach medical ethics, Dr. Rodriguez told me during one of my regular checkups. Future doctors will learn about the Chen protocol as an example of how research can corrupt medical practice. My own health had stabilized beautifully. The aggressive treatment that Dr. Rodriguez had started immediately after discovering Dr. Chen's deception had been successful. I was now 2 years cancer-free. If we'd started treatment when Dr. Chen first diagnosed you, it would have been much easier. But we caught it before it became untreatable, and that's what matters. Do you think she knew I would survive? I think she was gambling with your life for money, and she didn't care about the outcome as long as she got paid. The foundation had also connected with international patient advocacy groups. We discovered that unauthorized medical experimentation was a global problem, with similar cases reported in 12 countries. Medical corruption isn't just an American problem, I told a World Health Organization conference via video link. Patients everywhere need protection from doctors who see them as research subjects instead of human beings. But perhaps the most meaningful part of our work was the support group we'd created for Dr. Chen's victims. We meet monthly, I explained to new members, not to dwell on what happened, but to celebrate our survival and help others avoid what we went through. Margaret's daughter had joined our group after her mother's death. She said, "I want to make sure no other family goes through what we did," she said. Mom's death has to mean something. The group had become like family. We'd been through something together that few people could understand. The betrayal of absolute trust by someone sworn to heal us. Dr. Chen thought she was so smart, Margaret said during one of our meetings. She thought she could use us and get away with it. But look what we've built from her betrayal. She was right. From Dr. Chen's crimes, we'd created a movement that was protecting patients across the country. The foundation had also established a scholarship program for medical students committed to ethical practice. The Linda Patterson Memorial Scholarship was awarded annually to students who demonstrated exceptional commitment to patient advocacy. We're not just preventing future Dr. Chens, I told our board of directors. We're creating future doctors who will put patients first. You need to see how our family's darkest secret became the foundation for a movement that would change lives across the country. 5 years after that terrifying day when I discovered Dr. Chen's betrayal, I was standing in the White House Rose Garden as President Harrison signed the Patient Protection and Medical Research Ethics Act into law. This legislation, the president said, ensures that no American will ever again be subjected to unauthorized medical experimentation. The courage of Patricia Morrison and other victims has created protections that will save countless lives. I thought about Dr. Chen, now serving her 25-year sentence, and wondered if she ever imagined that her crimes would lead to the strongest patient protection laws in American history. The law mandated several key protections:
criminal penalties for unauthorized medical research, mandatory disclosure of all research funding to patients, a national database tracking doctors involved in research ethics violations, patient advocates in every hospital to help identify potential abuse. But the legal victory was just one part of the legacy we'd built from Dr. Chen's betrayal. The Informed Patient Foundation had grown into a national organization with chapters in all 50 states. We'd helped identify and stop 12 other doctors involved in similar schemes, potentially saving hundreds of lives. Your foundation has fundamentally changed how patients interact with the medical system, Dr. Rodriguez told me during my 5-year cancer-free celebration. People are more informed, more assertive, more willing to seek second opinions. That's exactly what we wanted, I replied. No one should ever trust blindly again. The foundation's educational programs were now taught in medical schools nationwide. Future doctors learned about the Chen case as a cautionary tale about how research can corrupt medical practice. We've trained over 10,000 medical students in ethical research practices, our education director reported. They understand that patients are people to heal, not subjects to study. Margaret had become a national spokesperson for heart disease awareness. Her story about Dr. Chen misdiagnosing heart attacks as anxiety had led to new protocols for evaluating chest pain in women. Doctors can no longer dismiss women's cardiac symptoms as emotional, she told a cardiology conference. Dr. Chen's betrayal taught us that patients' concerns must be taken seriously. James had revolutionized diabetes education, focusing on patients' rights to proper monitoring and treatment. No diabetic should lose their vision because a doctor wants research data, he'd tell audiences. Your health is not a science experiment, and you have the right to demand proper care. The foundation had also gone international. We'd worked with patient advocacy groups in 15 countries to identify and stop similar research abuse. Medical corruption is a global problem, I told a United Nations Health Committee. But patient advocacy is a global solution. Our red flags checklist had been translated into 12 languages and distributed worldwide. Doctors who discourage second opinions, unusual delays in serious condition treatment, physicians more interested in documenting than treating symptoms, medical practices receiving funding from unknown sources. The most unexpected part of our legacy was how it had changed my own life. I'd gone from a trusting patient who never questioned authority to a fierce advocate who testified before Congress and spoken at international conferences. You've become the voice for patients who can't speak for themselves, my daughter Emma told me. Dr. Chen tried to silence you, but instead she gave you the loudest voice possible. Emma had been inspired by our work to become a patient advocate herself. She's now in law school, specializing in medical malpractice and research ethics. I want to continue what you started, Mom. I want to make sure no family goes through what we did. The foundation had also established the Linda Patterson Center for Medical Ethics at the University Hospital where Dr. Rodriguez worked. Linda's daughter had been instrumental in creating the center. Mom's death has to mean something, she'd said. If her story can prevent other families from losing someone they love, then maybe there's purpose in our pain. The center conducted research on medical ethics, trained doctors in patient advocacy, and provided resources for patients who suspected they might be victims of research abuse. We've investigated over 200 cases of suspected research abuse, the center's director reported. Early intervention has prevented dozens of potential tragedies. But perhaps the most meaningful part of our legacy was the community we'd created among Dr. Chen's victims. We're not just survivors, Margaret said during our 5th anniversary gathering. We're warriors who turned our trauma into triumph. She was right. We'd taken the worst betrayal imaginable and used it to protect others from the same fate. Dr. Chen thought she was so clever, using our trust against us for profit.
But her betrayal had created something she never could have imagined, a movement that would protect patients for generations to come. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the most important things we do, I reflected during my speech at the anniversary event. Looking around the room at the faces of people whose lives had been forever changed by one doctor's greed, I realized that Dr. Chen's greatest crime had become our greatest victory. Don't miss the conclusion, where you'll discover how losing everything I thought I wanted gave me everything I actually needed. 7 years after Dr. Chen's betrayal nearly killed me, I'm sitting in my office at the Informed Patient Foundation, looking at a wall covered with thank you letters from patients we've helped, and I'm amazed by how much strength can grow from the deepest betrayal. "Mrs. Morrison," my assistant calls from the doorway. "There's a woman on the phone who thinks her doctor might be delaying her treatment. She found our website and wants to talk." These calls come in daily now. Patients who've learned to trust their instincts, who refuse to accept dismissive explanations, who know they have the right to demand proper care. Transfer her to me and get Dr. Rodriguez on standby in case we need an immediate consultation. This is my life now, helping patients recognize when they're being manipulated, connecting them with ethical doctors, ensuring no one else goes through what I experienced. The woman on the phone, Sarah, is 48 and has been told her persistent cough is just allergies for 6 months. But it's getting worse, and my doctor keeps saying we should wait and see instead of doing more tests. But am I just being paranoid? I thought I was being paranoid too. Trust your instincts. They're usually right. I connect Sarah with Dr. Rodriguez, who sees her that afternoon. The chest X-ray reveals early-stage lung cancer that's completely treatable with immediate intervention. "You saved my life," Sarah calls to tell me after her surgery. "If I'd waited another 6 months like my doctor suggested, it might have been too late." These calls make it all worthwhile. The pain of betrayal, the agony of treatment, the years of fighting for justice. My own health remains excellent. 7 years cancer-free with regular monitoring that gives me peace of mind. Dr. Rodriguez has become not just my oncologist, but a close friend and ally in our patient advocacy work. "You know what's remarkable?" he told me recently. "Dr. Chen's betrayal has probably saved more lives than she would ever have as an ethical doctor. Your foundation has helped thousands of patients get proper care." It's true. The Informed Patient Foundation has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We now have 50 state chapters, international partnerships in 20 countries, a 24-hour hotline for patients who suspect research abuse, educational programs in over 500 medical schools, and a legal aid fund for victims of medical experimentation. But the numbers don't capture the real impact. The individual lives saved, the families protected, the trust rebuilt between patients and ethical doctors. Margaret has become our heart disease specialist, James our diabetes advocate. Together, we've created a network of survivors who use their experiences to protect others. Dr. Chen thought she was so smart, she said during our recent board meeting. She thought she could use us and get away with it. Instead, she created an army of patient advocates.
The foundation has also changed how medical research is conducted. The Chen protocols we helped develop are now standard practice. All research must be explicitly disclosed to patients. Independent patient advocates must approve research protocols. Financial incentives for delayed treatment are prohibited. Patients have the right to withdraw from studies at any time. Your case has fundamentally changed medical research ethics, testified Dr. Patricia Williams, head of the FDA's Research Oversight Division, during a recent congressional hearing. The protections we have now exist because of your courage to speak up. My daughter Emma graduated law school last year and joined our legal team. She specializes in medical malpractice cases involving research abuse. "I want to continue what you started, Mom," she told me. I want to make sure no family goes through what we did. Emma has already won 3 major cases against doctors involved in unauthorized research, securing millions in damages for victims and their families. The most unexpected part of this journey has been how it's changed me personally. I went from being a trusting patient who never questioned authority to someone who's testified before Congress, spoken at international conferences, and been featured in medical textbooks. You've become the voice for patients everywhere, my husband Robert tells me. I married him 3 years ago, a fellow cancer survivor who understands the importance of advocacy and truth in medicine. Dr. Chen tried to silence you forever. Instead, she gave you the loudest voice possible. Robert works with our foundation support programs, helping newly diagnosed patients navigate the medical system with confidence and knowledge. We teach people that they're not just patients. They're consumers of medical services, and they have rights. The foundation has also established the Linda Patterson Memorial Research Center, dedicated to ethical medical research that truly benefits patients. Linda's death wasn't in vain, her daughter tells me regularly. The research center has already led to breakthroughs in early cancer detection that will save thousands of lives. But perhaps the most meaningful measure of our success is the relationship we've built with ethical medical professionals. You've helped us remember why we became doctors, Dr. Rodriguez told me recently. To heal people, not to use them. Hundreds of doctors now volunteer with our foundation, providing free consultations for patients who suspect they're being manipulated or used for unauthorized research. As I prepare for another day of advocacy work, I think about Dr. Chen, now in her 7th year of a 25-year prison sentence. I wonder if she ever imagined that her betrayal would create something so powerful. Thank you, Dr. Chen, I sometimes say out loud, though she'll never hear it. Thank you for showing me that patients have power when they refuse to be silent. The woman I've become, advocate, survivor, protector of others, exists because of her betrayal. She tried to use my trust to destroy me, but instead she taught me that trust must be earned, that patients have rights, and that speaking truth to power can save lives. My cancer is gone, but my purpose is stronger than ever. Every patient we help, every life we save, every doctor we educate is a victory over the kind of medical corruption that Dr. Chen represented. Sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up creating our greatest strength. Dr. Chen thought she was conducting an experiment on me, but the real experiment was whether one patient's courage could change an entire system. The results speak for themselves. The end. Have you ever felt dismissed by a medical professional? Have you questioned a doctor's treatment plan but been afraid to speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice might help another patient trust their instincts and demand the care they deserve.